Welcome everybody. Welcome for the first time. Welcome back. Speaking of which, tell us where you're at there. Are you a newbie to us? Are you a regular? And where are you at in the country? That's always fun for us to hear. I am generally at the our office in Salem, Massachusetts, just north of Boston. I'm still in the North Shore. I'm in Marblehead. If you ever this little fishing village called Marblehead. If you ever take a trip to Boston, try to see if you have enough time. Go to Salem, go to Marblehead. Beautiful little ocean communities here. I'm at making a guest appearance at one of our partners,
Jersey Shore.
Jersey Shore, baby, DTS.
Love it.
There we go. There we go. Ontario, Canada. There we go. Frequent flyer. There's another name.
Amish. That's where I used to live.
OC. There we go.
Yeah, we got some Midwesterners.
El Segundo. Let's go. That's where my brother lives. Let's go, LA Chargers. El Segundo. I've been a frequent flyer to Southern California. My favorite community in Southern California, El Segundo. So welcome. Happy to have you. Okay, so we'll do some quick introductions. We got a lot to cover tonight, and obviously the get is all right. We're at game time here, right? We know where we're going. We know how much it's going to cost. How are we going to pull this off, right? If we have resources, when should we deploy what? If we need to borrow, how do we get the best rate, the best loan possible? And we're going to talk about why we should borrow at least something, even if we don't necessarily have to. So quickly, my name's Matt Carpenter. I'm one of the founders at College A Pro, again, just outside of Boston here. This is my partner in crime, the fairy godmother of financial aid, Peg Keogh, who's just outside of Seattle. I've been doing this for almost 2 decades here. This is it's not a sexy part of the process, but it's so important. It doesn't get talked about enough, and we'll talk about this a little bit, but like the difference between choosing a loan that is 1% higher than maybe the plan B can be a swing on average of $30,000, right? So again, it doesn't get talked about a lot. Most people just throw darts here. Our get is to make sure that you're making an informed, educated decision, right? So you kind of leave here tonight being like, okay, I think I know the right fit for my family. And if you don't, we'll talk about how we can help you on a more customized one-on-one basis. But Peggy, why don't you say hi and we'll get rolling?
Yeah, so as Matt said, Peg Keogh. I have a background like everybody does, but I think my best credential is really that I have 2 kids. I have twins, a boy and a girl, and I've been through this process. I've been through this part of the process and the whole part of the process. So our groupies, you know the story, but it's as Matt said, this is a really important piece here. Because if you end up just taking a Parent Plus loan, for example, oh, I know about that. It's easy to get. That literally could be tens of thousands of dollars more that you're paying in loan payments than you need to. So it's a really important part. And I'm also going to talk about your resources and what you have and how you have different buckets potentially, if you're fortunate enough to have different buckets. So we're going to talk through that super important piece of this. And it's good to just kind of get your hands around it. And as Matt said, if we can help you finish that so you can enjoy, we're almost into July. A lot of your kids are going to be taken off mid-August, by the end of August, most schools for semester school. So it's getting close. I don't want anybody to start crying, but it's good. Then I'll start crying. It's going to get close. It's getting close for your kids to take off. So you want to enjoy your time with them is my point. So if we can make that easier to get through this piece, and then you can be hounding them to get their room, get together and start.
Get a job.
Yes. All right. Let me share my screen here. So for the newbies, we are College A Pro. This truly is our mission, and to end the student debt crisis by empowering you. And this is a step in the process. If some of you have younger kids, you're going to start this process all over, and we educate you and we walk alongside you the whole part of this journey. So we can support you in several different ways throughout the journey. But the more you know, the better off you are. And that's no different when it comes to loans and how to bring this all together and how to pay. So we're happy. We are happy to be here to support you on this. So there we are. Okay, so everybody, this was sent out, right, Matt? We did our email per usual.
Yeah, they should have got that today. Yes.
Yeah, so a lot of you have already set up your account. We can see that, and that's awesome. If you are brand new, and I saw a few people that said they were new, definitely set this up. It's mycap.collegeapro.com. Matt's going to put it in the chat. He's going to show you when he's in there. Like, we have loan information to help you start to get your head around this. And Matt said, this is the last part of the process. You know what it's going to cost. Some of you might even be saying, I'm still waiting to hear back from the college. This year is just kooky. Kooky is a nice way to say super, super, super messed up. So some of you might not even know that yet. And that's something we can help with. And that's also on our platform. So definitely set up your free account. If you're a groupie, I'm sure you've got it set up, you're good to go. But if you haven't, go ahead and take care of that.
And Peggy,
So,
the only thing I'll add to that is that we are still, with all the madness this year, with the FAFSA delays and what just a cluster, what it's been, we're still negotiating, appealing successfully for more money from these colleges. Emerson College was one. I'm just stealing that example because it's in my backyard, but they're one of many saying, "Hey, our enrollment is a little bit down this year." Know what that means? That means there is wiggle room. That alarm bells should be going off, that they're going to do everything they can to keep their current enrollment, which means you should be going back to ask for more money. I say that because if you haven't set up your account already, we'll tell you, did you get a good deal at this college, right? Should you be going back to ask for more money? Because before we talk about borrowing, if we can reduce the amount we have to borrow by getting more money from the colleges, it's not necessarily too late. So just want to make that point quickly.
yeah, and I'll just share, we don't want to get off target, but we were at a conference in Sacramento, Matt and myself and one of our experts, and we presented, and a woman in the audience shared. She said, I used to work at a small liberal arts college, and if people reached out to us, we would just give them $1,000 just because they reached out, even if they're like, well, they're not really making a case for us to do this. And she said, and they track this very closely. She said 60% of those families would end up coming. A lot of you have already said you're going somewhere, but you've committed because we're almost in July. But my point is, this is, you got to play the cards you're dealt. So it's been a kooky year, but at the same time, what Matt's saying, that's happening. People aren't finishing FAFSAs. Their yields are down. The college's yields are down. So that's a card you can play. The worst thing that can happen is they say, no, that's the best we can do. But if you get another $1,000 in merit, that's $4,000 in your pocket. That's huge, right? That's $1,000 a year that's not part of borrowing that we're talking about. Okay. So let's talk about the timeline here. So if your child's going to a semester school versus a quarter, semesters are going to be more, are going to be sooner because the school year will start usually toward the end of August. So the bills could start coming out next month. They'll probably hit up in the portal, and you're going to want to be working on those loans now. They don't take a long time, like it says on here, usually to be approved. It doesn't take weeks and weeks, but it's good for you depending on what your family's going to do. We're going to get in the weeds on this. You might apply to different stuff to see where the chips fall. What terms can you get? What interest rate are you going to actually get before you make the decision? So you need time to do that, kind of lay it all out on the table, and then choose the best way to bring this all together. Then, of course, there's going to be a bill due. If it's quarters, it'll be 3 times because unless your child's going to summer quarter. And for semesters, it'll be twice. So you're not early in the game, right? This is, going to continue for the next month or so. And the schools do have payment plans. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And for some people, that's super helpful. That gives you, from a cash flow standpoint, it's really helpful. But that could mean that you're making payments even sooner. So you really want to have your ducks in a row about the loans and about your accounts that you have, your 529s, whatever it happens to be, and how you're going to use them. So it's you're not doing it on the fly and maybe not making the best decisions. And as I said just a minute ago, cash flow is huge here. It's huge if you have a payment plan, but it's also like, it seems like 50 bucks, $100 a month. Well, gosh, I'm looking at a $50,000 bill. How is that going to help me? It really, really, really does add up. So this is a time to kind of think back, sit down with your partner if you're married, if you're not, in your household, and think about, where can we maximize our efficiency? And being a financial planner by background, which I didn't share, I used to be a financial advisor, and the financial planner in me never goes away. My husband could attest to that, and it's not always a positive, he would say, but it's good to sit back and start thinking about, especially if this is your first child and you've got other ones coming up, like we said on here, clean out your financial drunk drawer. I was gonna say junk drawer, and kind of get your head around, like, how are we spending our money? Maybe even, God forbid, if you don't budget, think about, just, you don't have to go deep, but start to think about, how are we spending our money? And are there places where we could cut back a little? Is there stuff we're paying for that we're not using? That's what we're talking about here. Because if you can do that, it doesn't really even change the quality of your life and your standard of living. But all of a sudden, it's like, oh, we got 150 bucks here. So we're going to scroll that away for college. And that's money you don't have to get a loan. That's money you don't have to start tapping the accounts that if you've been fortunate enough to save, you don't have to tap those accounts as heavily.
So
Um,
Peggy, so on that note, right? I've been whatever, we've been giving that slide for almost 20 years, right? I said, one of these years I'm going to take my own advice. I did it. I did it last week, and I cut my cable bill by $100, like literally almost on the nose.
nice.
I threatened to say I'm going to cut the cord. I'm just going to stream, blah, blah, blah. They passed me off. They have a whole office dedicated to retention, right? The retention office. And
Yep.
whatever, long and short, $100 off the cable bill. So,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. Another thing I would say is shop around your insurance. Like if you have car insurance and homeowners and an umbrella, like I do. And I know that complicates things and you're trying to figure all this out. But they always say if you just stay with your insurance company forever and ever and ever, you're probably overpaying for all of that. So that's another place where you could have some meaningful savings too. So I'm proud of you, Carp. Nice
right.
job.
Thank you. I
I
appreciate it.
am proud of you. Okay. So I brought this up before. This is huge and really important to look for. A lot of financial aid award letters talk about payment plans because they want to help you pay. Like they want your money, right? So usually there's an enrollment fee, but they're not charging you interest like car insurance. If you pay monthly, at the end of the year, you've paid a lot more than if you just pay it annually. They're not doing that. They're not trying to screw you. They're just trying to get your money. And if they get it 3 times a semester or 4 times a semester, it's a hell of a lot better than not getting it, right? So that's how they do it. But as everything in this process, they're all kind of different how they do it. So you got to read, you got to see how it works, and it could start kind of early. And it's your payment plan. So you don't have to put all of it on the payment plan. You can decide, same thing with loans, you can say, I want this much of the loan. It's your strategy, it's your plan. So keep that in mind. And we didn't do the housekeeping. We forgot. So we like questions. So put them in the Q&A as opposed to the chat. And this is going to be recorded. It is being recorded. So you will get it if you get distracted or you have to leave or do a carpool run or whatever. Okay, so that's the payment plans. So now, and yeah, keep the emojis coming. We love the emojis. There's different, I've mentioned this a couple times already. There's specific resources that people might have. If you don't have these, don't stress. If it just sounds Greek to you, that means you don't have it and it's all good. Some people have accounts that are called UGMAs or UTMAs, UGMAs or UTMAs. It's basically an old kind of account where you gifted money to the beneficiary. So if you have that, a lot of people, grandparents would set that up to set aside money for college. That's fine. And we've talked about this through this process. If you have younger kids and you have those, you should tap us for some support on that because it's considered a child's asset. But we're not going to get in the weeds on, meaning the student, we're not going to get in the weeds on that now. Just realize that is a bucket, but you're going to want to use it very strategically. There's tax ramifications. If you're getting need-based aid, you want to be really careful about that. So that's something where you're going to want one-on-one support from us. What's more typical is that people have 529s. It's a college savings plan created by the IRS. They might have a prepaid tuition plan. That's a type of college savings plan, falls in the same bucket. They might have a Coverdale IRA. Those are all college savings plan accounts. You might be tapping those. You're going to want to do that for your cash flow, and you're going to want to look at a few things before you just say, oh, we're just going to max out and spend. We don't need loans. We've got enough 529s to pay for year 1 and year 2. And then all of a sudden there's a big gulp when your child's a junior. You say, okay, now what do we do? We've spent all our 529s. You're not going to want to do that. You're going to want to think about loans now if they're part of the mix. And Matt's going to get into the weeds on some of these loans and why that makes sense, because some of them are use it or lose it. You can't go back and get the best loans. Then you might have other money earmarked. You might have gifts from grandparents. These are all the different buckets. So if you're fortunate enough to have that, you're going to want to lay out what you bring to the table. As Matt said, most of you know, this is what the sticker price was. We're actually expected to pay this. The next step is, what are you bringing to the table? How are you going to use it? And then what's that delta? What's left? And that could be loans. There's some other things it could be that we'll talk about in a minute. So when it comes to 529s, and this is also prepaid tuition plans, like in the state of Washington, where I am, there's the GET, the Guaranteed Education Tuition Plan. You might have that in your state where you have your money. The key thing with these accounts is you have to take the money out for qualified higher education expenses, which is defined by the IRS, or you will pay tax on the earnings, because currently they're tax-free, and a 10% penalty on the earnings. So if you have to do it for some reason, it's not the end of the world, but you saved it to use it for college. So now's the time. You're going to start using it. Qualified higher education expenses are tuition and fees, books, room and board, anything that college requires, a computer. Most people can easily use up their 529s over the 4 years and not have extra. If you do, there's things you can do. You can get the money as if you're the owner of the account, which typically a parent is the owner and your child is the beneficiary. You can take the money yourself and pay the college, or you can send it directly to the college. I did the former. That was just the way that worked for me, to say, hey, give me the money. I'm depositing in my account. I'm paying the bill to the college. I knew it was done, but that's not the only way to do it. The key thing here is, once you get into these years, these tax years where your child or your children are in college, you want to keep a paper trail. You're going to get a document from Vanguard or Fidelity or T. Rowe Price, whoever is administering the 529 that you have, called a 1099-Q, similar to what you get if you get one for interest and dividends. And it's going to be all about what you took out in the tax year. Remember, it's tax year. They don't care about the school year. It's all about the tax year. So you want to make sure, and then I'll stop, Matt. I'll stop on this slide. But you don't want to pull, you want to pull the money out of the 529 in the year you're paying the bill. Don't pull it out in December and pay the college in January. The IRS does not like that. That's going to cause you headache. So there's some nuances there. If I'm kind of overwhelming you, book an hour with us. We're going to talk about that at the end. We're happy to walk you through this, especially if it's your first time. You don't know what you don't know. We're happy to help out with that. But these are great vehicles to use to pay for college. Grandparent assets. This used to be a real strategic piece. It still is when it comes to the CSS profile schools. But if your child's going to a school that only requires the FAFSA, you're no longer penalized if you're getting need-based aid because grandma or grandpa or your buddy, your best frat buddy who never had kids, who set up an account for your child, wants to help in a given year. So the timing isn't as important if it's a FAFSA only school, but if it's a Harvard or a Princeton or MIT or one of the Grinnell, the schools that require the CSS profile, there's still some strategy there. You want to be careful because you want to make sure you're getting the most from the college endowments if you're eligible for need-based aid. So just keep that in mind. There is a tax credit. This is one of several, but this is the most popular one for who we're talking to tonight, the American Opportunity Tax Credit. So what a tax credit means is you do your taxes and you owe $15,000 in tax for that year. If you get this full tax credit, you now owe $12,500. It comes right off of the bill that you owe the government, which is lovely. If you are married filing jointly, just like a lot of tax credits, there's phase outs for income. It's 160 to 180. So if you're at 159,000, you can get the full credit. When you get in that range, it's going to slowly, it's going to diminish. So by the time you get to 180, you're out of it, right? If you're head of household or single, I think it's 80 to 90,000 for the adjusted gross income, which is what's up there, AGI. In order to qualify for this, you have to spend $4,000 on tuition and fees and books, not room and board. It's just an IRS thing. From an account that you're not getting a tax benefit. 529s, you're getting a tax benefit. It's tax-free growth. If you have savings bonds, you're getting a tax benefit. So you can't use, that's where people get stuck the first year because their CPA will say, you can't get it because you pulled all the money out of your 529 and now it doesn't qualify. So that's another strategy. You want to make sure you're doing that. If you're claiming this credit, you have to be claiming your child as a dependent on your tax return, and it's per student. So with me, with twins, if I qualified, I could have $5,000 tax credit. So it's awesome if you can get it. So we just want to make sure that you're aware of this tax credit that's out there for families. All right, Matt, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Peggy. So obviously that a lot of great information there, with the first focus being what can we do to try to minimize the amount we have to borrow, and hopefully some good food for thought, right? Payment plans and trying to go back to colleges to maybe get some more money out of them using our resources. But the fact of the matter is, a meaningful percentage of us, most of us, we're going to have to borrow something for college, right? So what's kind of the least of our evils here to be overly dramatic? A couple of rules that we'll visit throughout. Number one, unfortunately, there's no one size fits all universal rules. Everybody should take this loan, right? That would make our jobs easier. It would be a lot less for you all to think about. It doesn't work that way. Ultimately, what's going to dictate the best loan or combination of loans for your family is your family's criteria. And over the next half hour, I'm going to help you figure out what that is, right? We're going to talk about that because I'm willing to bet if I ask you what your borrowing criteria is, you say, I've never even heard that phrase before. So we will drill down there. And we'll talk a little bit, and we'll kind of start here. How much is too much to borrow? Now, I know at this phase, you kind of are where you are for you class 2024 families, but I think it's still helpful, and we still get the question a lot of like, kind of sanity check what we're doing here, right? And I'll give you something to anchor to. And Peggy, you can skip to that slide now if you would. And, obviously this is not an exact science, but it is data driven. Okay. We don't pull these numbers from thin air. There's a method to the madness here. But the long and the short of it is when we look at a student specifically, we really do not want them to borrow more than we expect them to make during their first year when they're in their career, when they're graduated from college. Okay. So in other words, if we're going to go be a computer science major, I'm okay borrowing, up to $76,000 a year. Over the course of 4 years, certainly not $76,000 a year, but over the course of 4 years, the math can still support that. Now, obviously we want to borrow less. Our intention and goal is to borrow less, but like we can stomach that. Whereas if we're going to go be an education major, we want to go be an elementary school teacher. That's amazing. But we don't want to borrow more than $43,000 because once we start to, again, the math doesn't support it. Our take home pay versus our monthly payments, there's not enough of a delta for us to sustain much, if any, of a lifestyle, right? So that's kind of where those numbers come from. Again, I don't want, our goal here is not to make people feel bad or pass judgment or anything like that. And for a lot of families, you are where you are right now. I just think it's helpful to anchor to something so you can, is you're starting to think about, well, how much should we borrow as parents versus students? If we're just starting to have these conversations, maybe that could be a helpful framework for your family. So types of loans, I'm going to rip through these because, again, we're going to drill down into each one. This is more of a table of contents. We're going to talk about the 2 federal loans, one for students, one for parents. We're going to talk about kind of the entirety of the private student loan marketplace. We're going to talk about less often talked about state loans and college loans. And then Peggy's quickly going to spend some time on what we call alternative options, kind of our not your standard types of educational loans. Now, this is one of the few kind of firm recommendations that at least I will make to anybody that I get in front of in this space. And I will recommend to every single family, whether you need it or not, to take advantage of the federal direct student loan. So long as you completed a FAFSA. And guess what? You're not too late. Even if you're a senior and you didn't even complete a FAFSA yet, you can still complete one now. Your kid, and every year, your kid will be eligible to borrow up to $27,000 over the course of 4 years. And here's why I want you to take advantage of this loan. If your family needs to borrow, okay, and you need, and maybe you even want your kids to have some skin in the game, this is the best place to start. They don't need established credit. They're not going to get a bill until 6 months after they graduate from college. Very favorable, very flexible repayment terms. Now, usually the rate's competitive, not so much this year. It's 6.5%, as you can see there. Now, believe it or not, within this educational loan market, that's still pretty good if you can believe it. But that, again, that's kind of the cost of doing business. Now, we work with a lot of families that have some means, they have some, they're blessed to have resources. They don't need their kids to borrow, right? And what I will still tell them is, okay, great, that's good for you guys. Still have them take out this loan, pay it off instantaneously. Guess what? They're going to have established credit. They're going to graduate as 22-year-olds with a credit score in the high 700s, starting their financial life on third base, essentially, right? So the takeaway is, I don't want to spend too much time here, is that you got to convince me why it's not a good idea to take advantage of this loan in some capacity. You're entitled to it, use it. And it's use it or lose it, right? If you change your mind next year, you can't retroactively say, hey, we didn't borrow $5,500 freshman year. We would like to use that and pull it forward for sophomore year. It's not going to happen, right? So again, I wouldn't over rotate on it. I'm firm in my recommendation there. Take advantage of that, regardless of how your family actually needs to leverage it. Go ahead, Bag. So yeah, I think I covered all of these. Again, the rates kind of stink this year. There is a little bit of an origination fee with 1%. There's a couple of steps that you need to complete. The student needs to complete online for this money to actually change hands, where it will go from the Department of Education directly to the college, right? It all kind of happens behind the scenes. They don't send the money to you and then you send it to them. They're going to say $5,500 in most cases semester, half for fall semester, half for spring semester, and your bill is deducted by those amounts. Okay, so the federal program for parents, right? Now, historically, this is something that I've recommended to a meaningful percentage of families. Now, I'm still recommending it to some of the families I get in front of this year. And some families don't have a choice. This is their only option. But they've gone out of control, in my opinion, with the interest rates this year. They're just very prohibitive. This loan is only in the parent's name. Okay, so if you consider this to be your student's responsibility, and this loan doesn't get paid, they're not going to come after the student. They're going to come after you as the parent or parents. Okay, so again, that's something that doesn't matter to all families. Some families are like, hey, I still want to take out this loan and my kid's going to pay it off. That's fine, but that's a handshake agreement. And again, if they renege on that, They're not, there's no, the note is only in your name as the parent or parents. Now we got a question about this earlier. There are still some good forgiveness programs, okay? Specifically if you're in the civil service, if you're a police officer, if you're a firefighter, if you're a nurse, if you work at a lot of nonprofit institutions, if you're a teacher, okay, there are good forgiveness programs. The huge caveat there is that you need to, number one, it doesn't go into repayment. It doesn't go into kind of the forgiveness part of the program until 6 months after the student graduates from college, right? So 4.5 years from now is when the forgiveness program starts, and it lasts 10 years. And you need to be employed at that qualifying occupation for those next 14.5 years. So you can get a win here, right? You can get a win where you make payments for 10 years and whatever's left on it gets forgiven after that. But you have to have just a fair amount of confidence. If I'm taking this loan because I want to be eligible for the forgiveness program, you have to have a lot of confidence that I'm going to be in this position or some type of position in civil service, right? Or some of these, qualifying occupations for the next 14.5 years. So that's something to consider there, right? Things change. The other thing that's relevant is we don't know. I have to believe and imagine that if you get locked into this program, you're going to be locked in for life. But, as we all know, things change. Congress makes different rule changes and all this. So again, that's just another reason where people go into this loan only for the forgiveness program. They just need to be comfortable with that element of risk, I guess. Go ahead, Peg. You can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, again, only in the parent's name, right? One thing here that a couple things here that I should mention that are nice, that are positives about the plus loan. Now and again, in terms of the rate itself, it's 9.08%, and it has origination fee of 4%. So effectively
Over 4%, it's 4.25.
4.25, right? So effectively, the loan's about 10%, right? Back of the napkin numbers. So really high interest rates. But if you don't have good credit, this is by far the most lenient of all the lenders. This is by far the most lenient. So for some people, they just don't have another option, right? And again, we're not passing judgment here. That's just the nature of the beast for some families, where the private lenders and the state programs won't approve us. The plus loan is the most lenient. The federal government is most lenient. They're also the most lenient, the most flexible with repayment options, right? So if you're somebody that has really inconsistent income, maybe you're in sales, maybe you're, self-employed, and it's up and down, the federal government will work with you in a way that private lenders or the state programs will not, right? What you sign up for is the deal for the most part, come hell or high water, right? Whereas the federal government, again, is more likely to give you some flexibility. So obviously we're paying a premium for that flexibility, but it's a relevant variable for plenty of families. Go ahead, Peggy, if you would. So the state programs, these don't get a lot of press because unless your state has a program, you probably didn't even know they existed, right? And less than half of the states even have their own borrowing program. So you can always go check, hey, does the state that you live in, do they have options, right? If I need to borrow for college. Now, something that we flag here, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Iowa, these are 3 states that you can use their loans regardless of where you live, regardless of where your kids go to college, right? So I can be a Michigan resident and my kid can go to Rice in Texas, and I can use Iowa's lending program if I want. So it's just another place that as you're shopping for the best option for the best rate, you just want to include in that conversation. Now, and this is a program that is a little bit closer to private student loans, in that both the parents and the students are formally attached to these loans, right? So if that's an important variable for your family, it checks that box. The rates, right, are better than the federal government, right? Certainly. But you also don't have that same, they're closer to the private student lenders, where you don't have that same flexibility, that safety net, where if unforeseen things happen, right, there's a job loss, a job income reduction, right? These programs are not going to be as flexible as, again, the federal government is for those types of unforeseen things. But we want to make sure that you're doing your homework and checking them out, because some of them are pretty good.
Yep.
Go ahead, Peggy. Okay, so private student loans, I mean, these are, I think, kind of what we think of as your traditional lenders, right? Where this is a loan that is more so the student's responsibility, and then parents, or whomever, could be grandparent, aunt, nice neighbor, whatever, that co-signs on this thing. Now, this year more than ever, we've been sending people in this general direction, largely because of the rates, right? I mean, again, the federal government at effectively 10% a year, not good, not good. And these private student lenders, for the most part, none of them have origination fees, right? So we're not taking a haircut out of the gates. Same thing, we don't have to pay anything until after the student graduates from college, if we want, and we get a 6-month buffer. There's no prepayment penalties, and that's important to say for the federal and the state programs as well. No prepayment penalties, so we can chip away as it's feasible. And again, especially if our credit is even okay, we're probably going to get better rates here. I mean, some of the rates are even in the high fours if we have a really strong application in the private student loan world. And I'll show you, we have a particular step-by-step process that we recommend that you follow to make sure that you figure out, who exactly is going to give your family the best rate, whether it's one of the private lenders, the state, or the federal government, right? Because for some of you, if you barely are passing some of these, or barely being approved for some of these private student loans, it could be 14%, right? So we're going to beat it with the federal government there. But I'm going to show you before we wrap tonight in about, I don't know, 15 minutes, the exact step-by-step process we recommend that you follow to find your family's lowest rate. So stay tuned for that. But that's kind of, again, kind of some of the high level ways that each of these lenders work. The other thing that I should say, again, for private lenders, yes, we can get better rates, but like the state programs, if something happens, they're not going to work with us in the same way that the federal government will. Okay, Peggy, go
Yeah,
ahead.
and they tend to be variable interest rates. That's one thing about the federal loans. They're fixed, which can be a negative if the Fed actually, now they're saying they're going to do it once this year. We'll see, right? If interest rates start ticking down, that's not going to affect a loan that a student takes or a parent takes for the 24-25 school year. It will affect the rate for next year, but it'll be fixed. Whereas, the variable interest rates, you have interest rate risk. That can be, positive or negative. Some people, it's really hard for them to sleep at night with interest rate risk, So there's no right answer for everybody. Okay, so let me take a few minutes and talk about these alternative options. I answered a question about a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. Someone said, should I do that instead of, I asked about some loan. And I can't answer that. I need to know way more about your situation. But these are options. Several years ago, these were amazing options because interest rates were super low. We were talking to people that had mortgages, 4.5, and they could refi and take some money out. Their principal and interest payment went down. They had money to pay for. It was just a massive win-win. It was a lot of fun and could help people. The interest rates are much higher now. So you don't want to be refinancing your mortgage at 2.8% or 3.1% to 6 point whatever, right? For obvious reasons. You don't want to do any of this just in a financial aid silo. You got to look at the big picture. But these are options. Some people are sitting on a lot of home equity, so they could do a line of credit. And the nice thing about that is it's not a loan where it's like, here you go, you're paying interest. Here's a chunk of money that's sitting in your account. You take it when you need it, but you've got to meet with somebody who can help you plan this out. And it's really looking at that versus loans, like what makes the most sense. A cash out refi. If you are sitting on a mortgage that's super high, I don't know how you would be, that's a good option, but it's just not a thing anymore. And the home equity loans tend to have higher interest rates than the HELOCs. But we'd have to talk to you to say, hey, yeah, you should do a HELOC. I usually tell people, if you have a lot of equity, you can apply for one, see what you get, and you kind of have it in your back pocket, and then you can use that when you're looking at the different loan options. You've got that in essence as an option.
I will say I haven't recommended it in 2 years. I doubt I will this year too.
I
Just
know, I know. It was a screaming deal for a while. It was
but
awesome. It was awesome, but it's not the interest rate environment we're in right now. So 401k loans, these make my skin crawl. I mean, you truly are literally robbing your retirement. So you want to be really careful with this. I've had a few parents through the years that they are just dead set on doing this. And I'm like, okay, I can't talk you out of it. Fine. First of all, you have to see if your plan even allows it. You have to look, all the plans are different. So you might not even be able to do this. The interest rate is set by the plan. If for some reason you get let go, boom, you got to repay this puppy right away. So just be really careful. I mean, I know it's really hard to think about at this point in the process. Is this school affordable? But if this is what you're thinking about doing, you might want to think about, is this really affordable for us? So just be really careful with that option. This option works well for the right family. Like sometimes grandparents, they don't have a 529, they want their grandchild to have skin in the game, and it's like, okay, I'm not going to do the interest rate that the government or whoever, private loans or state loans are doing, but we're going to do up a promissory note, and I'm going to loan you this money. And maybe behind the scenes they decide, we'll see how Johnny does in college. If he's on Dean's List, this or that, we might pay it off, but the child has skin in the game. It can be a positive. It doesn't affect financial aid, which is a really nice aspect of it, but it is money within family, right? So relationships are the most important thing, right? So you know in your family if this is something that would not adversely affect relationships. You just got to be careful with that. But just throwing it out there that I've seen some families do this. I've had parents that are like, well, yeah, we'll take out the federal loan, but like, why am I want my kid to have more skin in the game, but why am I gonna co-sign a loan at a high interest rate? I'm gonna do a loan at a lower interest rate, and my child can pay me back, and I can decide what I want to do if I want to be lenient about that down the road. So that's an option. Life insurance. You might have seen stuff on social where people are like, I can, we can reduce your SAI by $10,000 or this or that. If you are sitting on a chunk of non-retirement money, you can put it in very specific life insurance products that have a cash value. You can take a loan off of that to pay for college. Just like I said earlier, I am not recommending this. I am putting it out there as an option. If an insurance person is all over you, you really got to think about, is this in my best interest? These products tend to be they pay nice typically, and that's fine. People need to get paid, but they also can be very expensive, and you need to understand what you have to pay into it. You can get underwater. So I've had a lot of clients through the years that come to me and it's like, I did this and I had tax ramifications and this and that. So putting it out there that it is an option, but for a lot of families, it doesn't make sense. So you want to meet with somebody who's impartial about this and is going to give you what I would call like fiduciary and your best interest advice around this, not because they're really trying to make a sale in essence. Because for some people it makes sense, but for a lot of people it just doesn't. So just keep that in mind. All right, I will kick this back to you to finish off here. I
yeah,
see a
thanks.
lot of stuff in chat.
Yeah, I'm
So
gonna tell him, Peggy, yell at him.
I'm not gonna yell at you. But hey, paste that over. I'm not saying we can get to all of this in the next 15 minutes, but paste them over to, if you have a question. Some of this is more about freezing. So, but if you have a question, just paste it over in the Q&A, and I'm going to go over there and start looking at them while
And
Matt's.
let me just, before I rip through this, right, guys, I'm gonna rip through these what I think are really important points, and I want you engaged and paying attention here for the last 10 minutes because I think it's the most important. And then I'll kind of leave you all with your marching orders. But there seems to be some confusion about the private student loan rates and PEG uh, added a point onto mine after I spoke through those to say, hey, look be careful because most of these private student lenders, once you get approved, this rate that will be front and center will be variable. Okay. Now, not all private student loan rates are variable. Just about all of them, probably all of them have a fixed component as well, but they can be a little bit deceiving, quite frankly. Not all of them, but some of them can be a little bit deceiving in that it looks like we got this incredibly attractive offer. But if we read a little bit closer in the fine print, that's only if it's variable. That's our introductory variable rate. And as we keep scrolling through the page, if we want a fixed rate, which is generally our recommendation, depending on how much of a appetite you have for gambling and roller coasters, etc., it's higher, right? So we might get this introductory rate of 3.75%. Like, oh my goodness, that's great. Let's lock this in. But if you scroll down a little bit again, it's gonna say that's variable and it changes quarterly and there's pretty high caps. If you want a fixed rate, it's 5.25. Right? I'm just throwing that out as a hypothetical, but just keep an eye out there. Whereas to the credit of the federal program, the state programs, I think they do a little bit better job being transparent in terms of saying these are fixed. Here's the deal, straight up, right? So let's try to help you figure out what's going to be the best loan option or options for your family. Okay, and if you're going to run off and tackle this on yourself, we want to make sure that we're sending you off with the best. We're arming you with as much instructions as we can. Okay, so you got to think about obviously the focus. I think for most of us when we're thinking about what rate is, I want to go get the lowest rate. Of course, the loan rate matters, but how much does it matter? So, for example, another data point that's important for families is who should be on this loan. Do you consider this your responsibility as parent or parents? Is it the students? Is it both? Do we care? That's going to dictate things because maybe, for example, you say, hey, it's really important that my student is formally attached to this loan in some capacity. Okay, great. That's fine. But guess what? The plus loan is off the table. Cannot be a consideration. Okay. Or maybe you say, the rate's really important to me. And I can get a better rate from the state program at 7%. But my job's so inconsistent. Anything could happen at any time. My income fluctuates a lot. Well, yeah, that 7% through the state is better than the plus loan at 9%, but they're not going to work with us in the same way, right? That this kind of points 3 and 4 here is how much do we value this flexibility, or insurance is almost another word that I like to use when making this decision, is to say, yes, I'm going to pay a higher rate for the plus loan, but I have this insurance if stuff doesn't go my way. Okay. But then we have to try to quantify that insurance. In most cases, if the plus loan is really competitive, yeah, I'll pay a little bit more for the plus loan, but damn, if we're paying close to 10% and I can get 5.5% through the private student loan marketplace, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I'm willing to pay that much of a premium. But these are the things you need to start thinking about that are going to help you determine, again, what is your criteria, and what the direction is that going to point you in, right? If we need our kids to be on the loan, there goes the plus loan. We're down to the state and the private sector, right? Now let's go find the best loan we can get there. And if I could, Peg, let me share my screen and
Sure.
you can share this link if you would, because these are kind of the steps, guys. These are if you're going to tackle this process on your own, these are the steps I want you to follow. Right, you're going to go into this link first. You're going to apply through College Ave. Takes 3 minutes, right? And it's a soft credit pull. Then you're going to apply through Sally Mae. Once you have those two lenders in a private student loan market, Earnest here, their Earnest is kind of an up and comer. They're trying to make a name for themselves, and what they're doing is they're saying we will match any competitor's rate. So you want to go see who's going to give us the best deal between these lenders, okay? And then take that to Earnest and say, hey, you need to at least match this. Now, I've had this conversation literally a couple hours ago. and it sounds positive. Obviously, I don't represent Ernest or anything, and I can't make any promises for them. Okay. But it sounds like, if I'm to read between the lines here, um, because I got in somebody's ear there, to say, will they beat other rates you get, right? Because if I get Sally Mae at 6%, and then I go to Ernest and they say, hey, we'll give you 5.99 or we'll give you 6%, I'll just go with Sally Mae. I already completed the application. Why would I go complete another application? But if they can knock off a quarter, well, now there could be a little bit. So I want you to have that same mindset that you're going to have with the colleges, is get the best deal possible, negotiate for yourself. Okay. Negotiate for the best rate. And so that's what you're going to do. Get these 2 steps with the private lenders that are generally the most competitive, bring them to Ernest and see if they'll beat it. Now you have your lowest possible rate within the private student loan marketplace, and you can go see what that looks like versus the plus loan. We know what that is, 9.8%, right? Versus these 3 state programs that are all entitled to leverage regardless of what state we live in and where our kid goes to school. So this is truly the way to find out how you can get the best rate. Now, what I want you to consider, okay, obviously, if you're going to go do this on your own, follow those steps. Don't overthink it. There you go. And again, you can, to Peg's point, compare that to borrowing against your life insurance, borrowing against home equity, etc. But go see what you can do here. What I would recommend, book an hour with one of our experts. Okay, here's a couple things. Number one, we're going to have firm recommendations to say, if I were you, this is the loan I would take. Okay. Furthermore, you can use that hour. We'll get those applications done together, right? We'll stare over your shoulder as you're doing these applications. Okay. If you don't want to do them beforehand, or, off the record, some of our experts will just say, let us do these for you. And you can stare over my shoulder, but I can do these things in my sleep in 2 seconds, which I can. All bang out in that hour. College Ave, Sally Mae, Ernest, we'll compare those to your other rates, and you're friggin' done, right? You are done. You can book an hour and be done with this whole process. We'll do the applications for you. Now, some of you're going to have to book more than 1 hour in some cases, but you can at least start here. If you book it tonight, if you book the hour tonight, you get 20% off. So instead of the 349, you get 279. And again, I think that's a really meaningful value where we can say, this is what loan we would take. And if you want, we'll do the applications right now with you, right? And bang it out and be done. If you need to book another hour, you book another hour. And all of our experts have coupon codes. They'll get you a coupon code to do another hour. It probably won't be 20%, but they'll be able to knock a couple bucks off. And how you can do that is in your MyCap account, right? And we've already shared this link. I'll share it again. But within your MyCap account here, if you've created it already, right, you just go up top and say upgrade and software plus expert to book that hour. Use that coupon code borrowing 20. If you're already a premium member, it'll just say talk to an expert like it does in my account here, right? And I can just go book a time. I can choose next available. I can choose a particular expert. You're in good hands. This is our first language for anybody that you meet with. You're going to be in good hands here. But take
Yeah,
advantage
and
of.
I would say, and Matt, if you already said this, I apologize, but like somebody wrote in and said, oh, I bought an hour a while ago. What if I want to buy another hour? You want to schedule a meeting. So kind of guesstimate when you'd want to meet, schedule it. You'll get the invite and there'll be a reschedule link right there. It's super easy because that way you can buy another hour tonight. Then you don't have to schedule your second hour. And then just put a reminder on your calendar that you booked it for whatever, July 1st. And if you don't need it at that, you can just go and move it out with one of our experts. And we have this whole team. Matt and I don't do this all day, every day. So we meet with families. We love meeting with families, but you don't want to wait for our availability. You want to go in there and click. You can show that, right, Matt? If you're in upgrade, you got to follow the prompts, which is pretty self-explanatory. But if it's talk with an expert, now you can see, you can pick next available if you're really stressed, or you can pick anybody on our list, right? We've got a huge team that we've, handpicked of people from all over the country that know what they're doing. I would say if you're the only person on there that you won't want to pick for loans is Brian Ford, because he's an admission specialist. If you have younger kids, he could be hugely helpful, and we'll talk about that on another webinar.
And
But
it, and
everybody else can help you, and you could at least get that discount and hold it for 2 meetings if you
And I don't
want.
want to forget to mention this too. Another thing that we're going to do in that meeting is we're going to look at the award you gotten from the college and see what we think the opportunity is for appealing and getting more money. So we can gut check that for you too. Or if you know you want to appeal, use it for that, start there. I know we got a lot of questions about that earlier. That's arguably what we do. I don't know. It's one of the most, one of the things we do most effectively, and that is sexy. That is a sexy result, right?
Yeah,
But
that is
yeah, again,
a
so if you feel like, again, I'm not sure what loan to take, I don't want to do these loan applications, book the hour, we'll do it for you. Take the thinking out of it. If, again, you know who you are, if you're a DIYer, follow these steps. Those are the steps right there. So we put them in there. Again, hopefully, you don't have to overthink it there. And,
Yeah, and if you have somebody ask, do you borrow for right now for all 4 years? No. This
Yeah.
will be every year. So if you have an older child and you're on here, you can book an hour to get help to get that done. So yeah, you're gonna be, if loans are part of your strategy, this is, gonna be a every year sort of thing. You don't wanna take out tons and tons of loans now and then pay interest for 4 years.
Yeah, and
That
those
would
of you that have been with us for a
sense.
while, we just give these discounts to our live audiences, right? So for those of you who are new, this will expire at midnight. For those that couldn't make it live, we'll give them some type of coupon tomorrow, but it certainly won't be for 20%. So if you're on the fence, do it. And again, otherwise, yeah, and you can see down here, there's some other, I think we have some other lenders as well, but either way, yeah, hopefully that's helpful, guys. I know it's a lot, and again, it's not the sexiest part of the process, but you should take a ton of stock in the fact that 99% of families that have to borrow, they are going like this, throwing darts, right? Throwing darts blindly,
Yeah, they're
hoping,
doing what their neighbor did or their sister did, and
or
it's not necessarily the best
it said
strategy.
plus loan on the award letter, or Sally Mae emailed me the most, so I did that, right? Right, exactly. Or I did what my friend did. At least by our hope here is that you're feel confident that it's not fun to borrow a lot of money, right? But at least you're like, okay, I'm doing it the best way possible for my family, right? Even though there's not a universal solution there. And obviously more questions, you want more individualized help, you know where to find us.
Yeah, we're happy.
Hi, Peggy, and by the
Happy
way,
to
we got
guide you along the way. Thank you for all your lovely
emojis.
comments in the chat and the emojis. Much
Big
appreciated.
emoji night for you, Peggy. Big emoji night.
Love it.
All right,
All right,
everybody.
everybody. Well, have a wonderful evening, and we will see you soon.
All right, guys. Good night,
Take
everybody.
care.